Not here. You cannot sleep here. Wake and continue, lest the desert take you. Hello everyone, and welcome back once again to Cosy Reads. I hope you've all been keeping well. Thank you all for joining me for another episode of The Lovers. As the man and imp progress in their journey, they find themselves in a grueling and non-forgiving desert. Hunted by land sharks and desert enigmas, the man and the imp will have to have their wits about them, lest they be claimed by the desert. Run! The imp shouted, as the man and the imp clambered over a rock formation. They were trying to find high ground, any that could get them away from the sharks and horrors that lurked on the surface. This was the first time the man had ever seen the imp lose composure, at least to this degree. The imp usually has some clever words, or is usually more refined. And even though now was not the time for him to think like this, what with them running for their lives, he couldn't help but burst out into laughter as they finally made it onto a raised structure. The imp was there, firing out every explicit he could think of, while the man lay in relief and laughter. What's so funny? That blasted land shark nearly got us. I'll boil your mother and turn her into shark stew, you steaming pile of whale shit, the imp shouted down to the shark. The shark rammed into the structure before swimming away into the desert. They could tell it was close, but at least for now they had some respite. This desert has got to be the worst place we have visited, the man said to the imp. You're telling me? I've never set foot nor tail in the desert before, and I would gladly never set foot or tail in it again. I did not realize how ravenously relentless these bull-headed sharks are, the imp replied. Very true, said the man. But we cannot stay here, we'll just be sitting ducks, and with how terrible the desert is, I wouldn't put it past there being some dangerous flying creature that will try picking us off from up here. But maybe we rest for a bit, the man added. The imp nodded at the last statement, before both him and the man slumped down and rested on the platform. Not here. You cannot sleep here. Wake and continue, lest the desert take you. The man woke with a start. Where did that voice come from? It sounded like his girlfriend's voice, but not completely. There was no one there, and remembering where he was, he put it down to the dream world calling out to him or doing some weird effect. The fact they had been asleep worried him. He never intended to fall asleep, especially out in the open desert. He felt ridiculously dehydrated and his skin had started to dry out. The wind had been chipping away at him. He looked over at the imp who was curled up, shivering but still asleep. He hadn't even realized how cold it had gotten. It was getting darker too. Trying to traverse the desert in the dark would be near impossible. He needed to wake the imp, and they needed to start their journey again. But which way would they go? This place was just sand and rocks for miles. He wasn't even too sure which direction they had come from, as the desert seemed to be moving and shifting constantly. Another trick of the dream world, he presumed. As he looked around, trying to find a way forward, he saw something in the distance, standing on some cliffs. It looked like a person. He couldn't make out much, but they seemed to be looking back at him. Was this some trick of the desert? As his mind started going? Or was it just a mirage brought on by desperation? He was going to dismiss the figure, but then a light shone from them and hit him in the face. He had to initially shield his eyes as it was bright, but then the light moved lower and lower until it hit the floor. It then started to burn into the platform they were standing on. The man stepped back so as not to get burned himself, and as he looked at where the light was hitting, he could just about make out a message that was being transcribed. A scrying light, the imp chimed in from nowhere. His voice and presence almost made the man jump. He could have sworn the imp was still asleep. He could see the imp trying to make out the message, and so he looked back to try and decipher it as well. Once the message was complete, the light then disappeared and the individual with it. It is dangerous to be here at night. Follow me for respite, the message read. The imp and the man looked at each other. Can we even trust a random desert person with a light? What about if they're bandits or something and this is some trap to lure us in and kill us? The man said. I do not know much about desert bandits, but given our current predicament, I would much rather take my chances in seeing whether the respite they offer is real than allow myself to become a shark's dinner, the imp responded. Yeah, I guess you're right, said the man. And with that, they'd resolved themselves to find the person and seeing what help they could offer. But how do we even reach them? They're on a cliff, but I'm struggling to even see a way up to it, the man asked the imp. Ah, now that is a good question, the imp said. almost like he had an answer to share. The man stood for a moment, waiting for more from the imp, before saying, "So, do you have any answers?" The imp shook his head and said, "Nope, it was a good question, but I have no answers." The man sighed and looked back in the direction of the cliff. He studied it, trying to see if there was any part of the cliff that gave way to climb. And then he noticed it. He thought his eyes were deceiving him before, or again it was some trick of the desert. But no, it was real. The cliff was moving. Slowly, but it was moving. And as it moved itself around, the back of the cliff was now becoming visible. And on it was a cave. One that might lead to the top of the cliff or deeper into it. "There," said the man to the imp. "There's our way in." The imp looked at the cave entrance and with a smile said, "Best get your sand wellies on then. We've got a cave to explore." And that brings chapter 7 of this story to an end. I hope you have all enjoyed this episode and have been enjoying this series, as we truly get right into the thick of it. The desert is proven even more perilous than initially thought. With sand sharks, jagged terrain and miles of nothing, trying to get through the desert is proven to be a challenge that not many would survive through. And now, with a potentially new danger to think of, how will the imp and the man fare against the person beckoning them to safety? Are they truly a saviour in the desert, or is it some ploy by nefarious entities to capture the man and the imp? Only time will tell. So make sure to come back for the next instalment of The Lovers and see just who this desert dweller truly is. And with that, I hope you have all sufficiently warmed up and that this story has brought you some level of comfort. I wish you safe travels on the journey of life, and feel free to come back again whenever you need a new story to warm your day.